My guest today is Sunayana Clark. She is an anxiety coach with a spiritual twist, which sounds intriguing. I'm going to hand over to Sunayana. Tell us more about yourself, Sunayana.
So thank you, Wendy, for having me on here. I'm really delighted to be here. I've been a holistic therapist for over 20 years. And so I firmly and truly believe that the solution has to look at your mind, your body, your emotions, and your spiritual health. And I have learned over the years of treating people with all sorts of illnesses that anxiety in particular is related to a traumatic event that will have occurred in your life. And it's our inability to process those emotions that then have a knock-on effect on our physicality, can have a knock-on effect to your spiritual beliefs, it can have a knock-on effect to your mental health, which anxiety obviously has an effect on. And I'm firmly of the belief that you don't have to live with anxiety either. We are amazing machines, and we just need the right prompts to create our own self-healing. So one of my ethoses is that I'm not your healer, I'm your facilitator. I'm facilitating you heal yourself and empower you in the process so that you can live your life full of joy and ease and abundance. So yes, that's a bit about me.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I like you, I believe a lot of issues that people generally, if they've experienced a trauma in their lives, that is likely to get, if it doesn't get processed, if it doesn't get dealt with, if it is pushed down, either consciously or subconsciously, because the brain is an incredible machine, as you say.
Yep.
And it can bury those things on purpose because it's too hard to deal with. If we're holding that, then it will manifest itself, as you say.
And you have to remember that the brain's primary role is survival. So it's learning from the moment you're in the womb onwards. Everything your mum felt when you were in her womb, your body, your brain learnt it and stored it. Every experience you've ever had, it has stored it, and it uses that as its repository to decide how to react to a situation. So if I take myself, for example, about 10 years ago, my dad died, and it was abrupt and shocking and dreadful. And it left me with a sense of being abandoned. Well, if I go back in my childhood, there have been a couple of instances where I have felt that feeling before. So when I had this shocking experience again, when my dad died, that's where my brain was like, oh, we've felt like this before, and then started to act. And that's how my grief and a bit of anxiety actually came out as a result of that. So, yeah, your brain holds on to everything, good and bad.
It does. I mean, that's what's so amazing, isn't it? That we can hold so much. Our brain contains so much. I marvel. I never cease to marvel at how much information is stored in there. I mean, our bodies are just amazing, aren't they?
So you have a neurological memory, which is in your brain, but you also have a cellular memory, which is in your cells. And this is where energy comes in, and I suppose spirituality comes in. Your cells are replenished. I think every 90 days, I think it is, you are a completely new person on a cellular level, from a scientific perspective. But we hold emotions and memories of emotions as an energetic process, and that is carried through every rebirth of your cells. So you can hold the memory of trauma within your physical cells as well. So you've got the holding within your brain, but you've also got a holding within your cells. So someone, for example, who has something like Crohn's or irritable bowel syndrome or even endometriosis, that's an example of their body holding a cellular memory in their digestive tract or in their reproductive areas. that can be related to a cellular memory being held.
Yeah, and it's not, it's in different parts of the body as well. That's what's interesting. As you say, it's held in the gut in some places, but there are other areas where it also holds it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm.
And the one that comes up with me a lot is when I'm working with survivors or victims, survivors of childhood sexual abuse.
Right.
Fibromyalgia, quite a common one. That is held in the body, as you say, it's in the cells.
And it's and the thing about it is that we're not taught to look at the whole. We're taught to look at our symptoms, right, and deal with our symptoms. We're not taught to look at what's the underlying cause. So, for example, if you're a survivor of abuse, childhood abuse, you have learned through experience that your most personal space, your bedroom quite often, or your home, is not a safe space to be, right? And so that memory is held in your brain. And then so the ability to have a relationship and bring someone else into your personal space is incredibly hard, because that's threatening, right? And so then your body throws out. Supposing you met someone lovely, you decided you're going to bring them into your home, but you end up having to cancel because you're unwell, because you have a physical reaction to it. You know, and you get the people who throw up, or they get a migraine, or whatever it is that they get. That's the physical response to that trauma that's stored in their body. And what their brain and body are doing is like, we've got to keep you safe. We can't bring this person, even though we like this person, we think this person is lovely. Consciously, we think that. Unconsciously, we're like, no, you're coming into my safe space. I'm not going to let you in. I've got to protect. That's what your brain is doing, and that's what your body is doing as well. And that's why it's important whenever you work with anybody who has any anxieties to get to that root cause. Otherwise you're just literally just skimming the surface and, you know, not really dealing with the actual problem. And that holding of emotion, an event, that traumatic event in your body, is the thing that can lead to long-term illness as well. So, and this was partly how I understood this, how I began to get an understanding of how we hold emotions, was working with women with breast cancer. And when I asked them about their history, and I was like, did your cancer appear out of nowhere? No, actually, about 6 months before, I got a cold and I just couldn't shake it off. And I just seemed to be constantly sick. I was like, that's interesting. And I said, what happened before that? Oh, then my blood pressure kind of shot up out of nowhere. So the body is constantly showing you little signs that something's wrong. But again, going back to, we haven't been taught how to look at the whole. We don't connect it to the traumatic event that we're holding on to, that we don't even know we're holding on to, because A, we're taught move on, don't dwell in the past. That's a message that a lot of people get. And secondly, the other thing is, oh, you're still talking about that thing that happened so long ago. Well, yes, it had a profound effect on me. Of course, I'm going to still talk about it. And then the other thing is that, you know, oh, live in the now, don't live in the past anymore. So you're kind of shut down as well. So then you have shame and guilt added into grief and horror and shock and all the other emotions that might be stored in your body and your mind as well. Yeah.
Yes. And I work in a similar way, and I agree with you, but it is getting people to understand there is that trauma that happened, and because they're said, yeah, but that was, as you say, such a long time ago, and then, or I've dealt with it, and you find that actually they haven't dealt with it. I had a client more recently who, she did tell me, oh yes, I've dealt with that, and you could see that she hadn't dealt with it. She thought she dealt with it, and they were huge things. I mean, they weren't, and I'm not saying that trauma always has to be enormous, because it's not. But that the things that she dealt with were, and by working together, and I got her to get in touch with her body, because she actually disconnected. She had a very logical brain. She could think very well. She had a successful career. She had it all up here, but she had disconnected to her emotions completely. So when I got her to get more in touch with her body, she realized that she had pain in certain parts of her body. And she'd been living with this pain forever, but hadn't been totally aware of it until we started talking about it. And she did this exercise that we did. And then she said, that pain is gone. But when we were talking about the trauma, she said, I can feel it's back in my body again. And it's just amazing how that physical pain will manifest, as you say.
If you consider your body as the barometer of your emotions, and you remember that, you will never ever look at pain in your body in the same way. I mean, like I fractured an ankle, etc. And so you would say, well, that's just a fracture. It was an accident. Yes and no. Yes, it was an accident, but actually what was going on emotionally was burnout for me, and I needed to stop. So my body and my emotions and my brain took charge, and I'm like, right. Not obviously, they didn't obviously get together and plan, we're going to fracture her ankle. But there was a circumstance that got created that allowed for that accident to happen. And then I ended up with 8 weeks enforced rest, and then another 4 weeks where I couldn't work and couldn't do a lot. I ended up with a 12-week rest, basically, right? So once you understand that your emotions are a barometer for what's going on, you can work backwards. So if you have pain in your knee, put your hand on your knee, close your eyes, and say to your knee, what is going on? And you will start to receive the information, whether it's a word, whether it's a feeling, it can be an image, it just depends on how you receive. Some people will just get a sensation of real heaviness, nothing else. Well, that's your clue, that's your starting point. Okay, what's heavy? What feels heavy in my life, therefore? What am I carrying? What am I holding on to that I should let go of? And see what happens. And as soon as you start becoming your own detective, you empower yourself immediately, right? But also you then begin to have more respect for your body. You begin to have more respect. You begin to understand how your body and your mind are working so hard for you, rather than, I think a lot of the time the conversation about our brains and our bodies are almost like they're a third person. They're not us. Oh, you have breast cancer, your breast is not working properly. No, that's not it. You know, there's a disconnection, like you say, between what they're feeling and thinking. There's a disconnection with the body and the mind. Let's reunite them. And then the magic begins, because they're working together in concert, and they can create those amazing reactions, those miracle healings you hear about. That's what you're seeking when you're looking at what am I holding on to emotionally, traumatically. And that's the reason why you should clear those things, you see. So, yeah. I could evangelize about this for hours, Wendy, hours.
And I completely agree. I think our body manifests those situations. And as a survivor of breast cancer, of a great number of years, and I bless every single day since that. That every day is a blessing. But yes, there were certain things in my life that created that. It wasn't it, because otherwise why do certain cells become cancerous and why don't they? Our bodies are telling us something. And because we are continually reproducing cells in a scientific way. So what makes some of them become a cancer? There is something, definitely. And the problem is that with traditional medicine, as much as it amazing it is, it just treats just that symptom and not the whole body.
Yeah, I think conventional medicine, I'm not anti-conventional medicine as a holistic therapist, actually. I think conventional medicine has its place in healing. I think the mistake that conventional healing or medicine makes is thinking it's the only path, right? I think conventional medicine is fantastic at diagnostics, you know, X-ray machines, MRIs, blood tests, amazing. I think NHS staff, amazing, dedicated people who care so much, you know. I think sometimes I feel quite sorry for doctors and nurses because they are constrained so much by what they can do or not do, and they might have a gut instinct of what could help someone, but they're not allowed to talk about it because of those constraints. I think, and I really hope, I have family members who are doctors, and I always get hopeful when I hear, oh, they had a nutrition lecture, and they understand that nutrition is not just about, you know, how we eat. It's not just what we eat, it's how we eat. Are we eating mindfully, or are we eating to comfort ourselves? And I'm waiting for more of that to happen. You know, Rangan Chatterjee as an ex-GP is a great example of someone who is now looking at things holistically. And I really hope he's someone who will inspire other GPs to do that, because they have such passion for caring for people, right? So if you go back to the cancerous cell, it's scientifically, it's a misalignment of the process of reproduction. So you get too many cells producing, okay? But on an energetic basis and on an emotional basis, it's actually an accumulation of lots of emotions. So you have often grief, shame, guilt, anger is a really common one to experience. You also have a feeling of being silenced, unheard, silenced. For some, there'll also be an issue around boundaries. So again, that goes to being empowered or not empowered to have your own boundaries. So if holistic therapies and conventional medicine could work together, you would use the diagnosticians in the NHS to give you all the diagnoses and do all the measurements, which are important as well. And then you would have your holistic therapists and people like yourself who would be working on the emotional health of that person and getting them to reconnect into, what am I holding? What am I carrying in my body? I did some work with someone for myself recently. So in the past, I've been prone, when I was very young, I used to get tummy pains, and now I recognize that was probably anxiety. And I recently had a bout of it. And I was like, this is a bit weird. Why am I suddenly getting this out of nowhere? And my friend just helped me connect into my tummy. And there was some old feelings that had been nudged, if you like, of sort of a bit of shame and a bit of guilt. And that's what my body was actually showing me, that there was some shame and guilt I was feeling about something. Nothing to do with digestion, completely unrelated. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know I was still carrying those feelings. Okay, let's do the work, you know. And that also brings to the point is that this work doesn't end. It's not a one-off thing. I'm sure you found that it's a layer. It's the onion that we talk about. You take off a layer, you have some growth. Then for the next bit of growth to happen, there's another, you go a bit deeper. But the work changes. It doesn't stay traumatic. It can actually move into something really beautiful and inspiring and exciting. You kind of go, actually, I think I want to do this work, because this has gone from being so painful to being, I'm growing from this, I'm changing, I'm becoming more of who I would like to become. And that's the other thing you get is, which I think is a shame in general in societies, we don't talk about people being the most of what they can be, to be, you know, some people, you hear people saying, oh, she's a bit too much. No, let her be too much. That means she's being truly who she is. She's not restraining herself or himself to fit into a box. They're the people who lead the way, inspire other people to look at their own personal journey and be more. And when we're all more, we're all at our best. That's when you start seeing this ripple effect into society. Sorry, it was a very long answer to your question, but it's
No, and it's it's so interesting, and yeah, I find it intriguing from what you were saying. And when you were talking about those emotions, you know, from so everyone you said, it was like tick, 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 every single one of them. I could relate to, because from my past, you know, growing up from childhood onwards, there were so many instances where I felt the anger, the shame, the unheard. I mean, you listed so many, and I could relate to everything.
The thing to remember as well, though, when you're doing your own journey and doing your healing, is not to blame anyone else, right? Everyone comes with their own experiences, which are true for them. So if we look at decisions our parents made where they shut us down, it's not because they were trying to be mean generally. It's because they are a product of their upbringing, their cultural and societal norms. And society has changed so much in the last 50, 60 years. It's incredible. So our job is not to ascribe blame, but our responsibility lies in taking responsibility for our own healing. Yeah. So you understand that person, and even though it's tough to hear for people who've been sexually abused, the person who is the abuser will have something that in their life that led them to be this kind of person. That doesn't excuse what they've done in any shape or form. But what we need to understand if you're the victim, is that you have a responsibility to not let that define you anymore. Yeah. You are more than that event or events or that abuse. You are more than that. You're a survivor. You're resilient. You have really, really good survival instincts because you've made it to adulthood and you have survived that. And people need to remember those things as well.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things when I'm looking back, and I agree with you, that the societal differences through the ages and so on, I often get people to look at it in that time frame, you know, what it was like then.
Yep.
And acknowledging, I often say to clients, especially if we're working face to face, this is not about a character assassination of your parents. This is, parents did the best they could with the tools they had. And so I often say, could we ask them to leave the room now, please? Because what I want to talk about, what we need to talk about, is the effect it had on you, their behavior towards you, or what happened to you. That's what we need to look at, the effect of it. And I think that's what you clearly have said, but I've just said that differently.
Yeah.
So it's important. Yes, all right, you know, and I think carrying that anger, I don't believe we need to forgive other people. But this is my stuff. But we need to be able to forgive ourselves and let it go. I think that behaviors you cannot forgive. I don't think I could forgive people for certain behaviors.
Yeah, I think.
But I do feel that if we carry that anger and that stuff around with us,
I think I agree that for some people it would seem impossible to forgive some behaviors. But if you hold yourself away from that forgiveness, there are two things. One is, forgiveness is a two-way street. So when you forgive someone else, it's easier to forgive yourself for being in that situation. And therefore, you're showing yourself compassion, and you're showing compassion for that other person and realizing that they are human and they've made some horrible, horrible mistakes, right? But in that process of showing yourself compassion and forgiving yourself, you can truly, I believe, really, truly and deeply let go of any of the emotions that you've been carrying. So that anger, that guilt, the shame, particularly. I mean, anger, shame and guilt to me are really, I call them useless emotions because they just make you feel bad. Like anger can motivate you to change. Fear can motivate you to change. But shame and guilt just make you feel lousy, frankly. When you are showing compassion to yourself and you can hopefully in the end show compassion to that person, what happens is that you allow yourself to let go those things, and it opens the door to something else, which is love for yourself. And love beats fear every time.
Oh, yeah, that is just so beautiful, Sunayana. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that's okay.
Sorry.
I'm just gonna say, well, we could talk for ages. I know there's so much more in that. What is one thing you would give to clients, a gift, something they could take away with themselves?
So number one would be, you do not have to live this way. There is always a solution. You need to find your right facilitator. So do your research. When clients come to me, I always say to them, I'm assessing if I can help you, but you need to assess if you want to tell me the truth that you would not admit to your best friend, the truth you would not admit to anyone, the truth in the middle of the dark night when it's dark and there's no one there. If you're ready to admit that kind of truth and be that kind of honest with me, we are a good match, right? And someone said to me, that's quite a high standard you set. And I say, yes, it is, because the work that you and I do, Wendy, is not shallow. It's deep, life-changing, life-affirming work. And in order to be our best, we need clients to trust us. And then you go to the therapeutic relationship between client and therapist. But it's also when we are honest with ourselves, we are at our bravest. And that's when you and I can empower our clients to move forward. So that, I think, is make the decision that you want to change and then find the right facilitator. And I promise you, there is a right facilitator for everyone. Absolutely, I believe that. I sometimes say to clients, if you've ended up in front of me, it's likely I'm the right person for you. I don't say I am until I've done my deep assessment with them. But I say that to clients because I tend to treat people who have done the conventional medical route. They've done counselling, they've done CBT and hypnotherapy. I'm a hypnotherapist as well, but they have not moved forward enough. And the spiritual stuff I bring in is the thing that's missing often. So that's why I say to people, if you've ended up in front of me, I'm likely to be the right facilitator for you. So, yeah.
Great. Yes, and it's such wise words. You've got to find the right person.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put all your details into show notes. But Sunayana, what's one easy way that people can get in touch with you and learn more about you?
So they could do my quiz, actually. I have a quiz that I created. It is based partly on my clients' questions and comments and partly on the GAD-7, which is the NHS's test for depression and anxiety. And I kind of combine them because the wording on the NHS ones was very similar to what clients were saying, but not quite the same. So I just worded it. It's 44 questions, which sounds a lot, but actually they're mainly yes and no with the odds sometimes. And it takes on average about 4 minutes to complete. And at the end of it, you have an opportunity to ask for a free 30-minute session with me. We can discuss your results, or you can say to me, I just want to understand a bit more of my story. And quite often in that 30 minutes, I can identify what is the thing you're not dealing with. And that's the thing that you will need to deal with in order to move forward at this point in your life. So quite often in that 30 minutes, I'll be able to understand what's going on. So
How do they find that quiz?
So the quiz is on my website, www.feelgoodtreatments.co.uk. Feelgood Treatments is all one word. Or they can find it on my Facebook page, Feelgood Treatments with Sunayana Clark as well.
Thank you so much for being a guest today, Sunayaana. It's been
you're welcome. Yeah, like you said, we could talk for hours. So thank you for having me. I hope it's helped your listeners. And I would say, remind them, you don't have to live in emotional turmoil. You can find peace, you can find abundance and joy in your life, and make the decision for yourself, and just for yourself, not for anyone else, for yourself. And that's the starting point.
Great. Thank you.
All right. All right. Thank you.